Hi, Kirian. Thank you so much for your rough draft. I wanted to leave you some feedback on it. As a whole, I think you have a good sketch for your week. Sorry, for your narrative. Um, I think that you have a story here, and I think it's a story with layers. So really, I think what I want you to work on is more clearly capturing place in descriptive detail and expanding out the good ideas that you have. Um, so you start out by saying, I am from a place where I experience prejudice for having a white skin tone. For anywhere else in America, this is the complete opposite. Um, so I get what you're doing here. Uh, but what I'd like you to do in your revision is capture Hawaii more clearly, right? So I really kind of like the fact that you're starting off with talking about racial difference, and really what you're capturing in the story, that which is what makes it so interesting, is that uh, not all white people have had this experience, right? I think this is one of the things that you're working out. Um, that not many white people have felt like they're the minority, at least not white people in the States. And um, I think that's one of the reasons why the university and really other areas that encourage young Americans to travel is so they can have that experience. What I don't mean is so that they can have the experience of being of prejudice per se. What I mean is so they can have the feeling of not being the majority, because when you are in the majority, you have the tendency to think that everyone else sees the world and experiences the world in a way that you do, right? And that's really what one of the themes of your narrative is, right? You're showing that you have a different way of viewing what's going on in the States right now, because you've been a minority once yourself, right? So that's why I think this narrative is important. But here's what I want you to work on. So first off, capture Hawaii itself in more descriptive detail. I think towards the end here, you briefly like talk about it as the paradise. That's what it's known for, the paradise vacation spot. I'm not saying that you have to capture it that way, because you know it in a way that a tourist wouldn't, right? You know it on a much more personal level. That's the Hawaii that I want you to capture, and that's the Hawaii that I want you to capture in detail. Perhaps start there, focus there, and then you can begin to bring in this idea of being the white minority. Um, Discuss this in more detail. So for outsiders, uh, people may not be aware of all the different races in Hawaii, right? So I would spend maybe a paragraph talking about that. In addition, I would spend a paragraph talking about this too, right? I get what you mean, but you need to dig into that deeper, right? So you need to talk about mainstream America, right? That's what you need to dig into and talk about in more depth. Um, so I like this. I like this background information here. Actually, I want to back up. So you present this idea here, and it's okay in the draft, because it's like, you're kind of working out what you want to say here. But I recommend coming back to this sentence and either clarifying it more specifically, like as in what experience it was, or perhaps give us a hint of what's to come through action, if that makes sense. So try to show us this instead of telling this. um so this is a place where you can pause and expand your description pretty well. This to me is fascinating, so I would talk about this more. This is also fascinating. So pause and give the reader like some sketches of some specific people that you remember, and some sketches of some specific clicks that you remember, because this is going to have more meaning if we have a better understanding of these specific clicks. Does that make sense? So what you've done here is like kind of created the sketch. I want you to slow down and actually see some of these ideas in this paragraph as separate paragraphs that you can expand on. And I don't know, I'm not quite sure how to advise you here. On the one hand, I am like, maybe you should define this for people who wouldn't know what it meant. But then on the other hand, I think people could probably put it together. I think I'm not going to ask you to define it. I think what I want you to do is more clearly discuss why it's an insult, right? Why you perceived it to be an insult. Does that make sense? Right? Because it seems like what is kind of in there is like a phoniness, I suppose, right? Along with the very like hateful racial connotations that come with it. So it might be interesting for you to explain this in more depth right here. Yeah. So what answers did you come up with here at this moment? This is another place to expand. So when you were thinking that through, what happened? So remember when we were talking about arcs in class the other day, this would be a really good place for you to maybe make it your climax, right? Because this is really your moment of change. So here are some good examples of what you understand, and maybe a place to expand as well is, do you think that you have the same insight as uh, maybe white people who have lived in the continental United States their entire life, right? Because it seems to be suggested that you view things differently. Um, Yeah. So these are the places that I'm seeing where you can expand. So the good thing that I think what you have is a fully realized sketch of a story. I get the sense of a beginning, a middle, and an end. But what I want you to do now is pull out those descriptive details, right? Really get in there and develop individual paragraphs, individual scenes to lead us to that moment of change for you. And I think starting with really capturing your setting, capturing your place is a good place for you to start. All right. I'm looking forward to this one. This is interesting and good. All right. Thanks.